Right. In 403 computer application, as I discussed, we will cover the basic structured programming using Python programming language. And we will cover from basic input, output, control structures, data structures, modularization. These are like very basic topics in structured programming. Once we finish this, we'll go into talk about like how to handle files, OP, and numerical computation, which I think a little bit complex topics if you are very new to programming. Right. Now, main software tools I'm going to use, make a note of this. Some of you may have already familiar with this, the notebook environments. So as a if you're working in statistics or data analytics, and even in mathematics. And if you use Python, you probably heard of using what we call Jupyter notebooks. That means it's a notebook environment where we can have our notes as well as our code, and the outputs can be keep in this some single place. So if you have a Google account, we have a cloud-based implementation in Google Colab, which you can access using colab.research.google.com. So that's what primarily I'm going to use. But for that, you need to have, internet connectivity. But if you want to install the same environment in your machine without internet connectivity, you can check for Jupyter Lab, which is the very same thing. And that is what actually you will find a Colab as well, where you can find jupyter.org. Although we are using these two topics, when we start, we will start with basic Python installation. So when you install Python, you will get default working environment. So in today's class, I will use that. That is, when you install Python, we will get something called idle, which is IDE for Python. So which I will use today, but in coming sessions, I'll start using, this notebook environment. So that's basically the software tools that I'm planning to use in your module. I know that most of you are new to Python. So therefore, these are some of the references that if you want to read more about Python. So if you like reading, especially reading books, my notes primarily based on my first reference, Downley and others on how to think like a computer scientist. The later on, actually, they have renamed this as Think Python, which is mainly coming with early publications, but it's freely available with the link given to you. So you can access this. And then if you are new to programming world, I think I want you to at least read a couple of, topics in this book so that you are familiar with the basics. And second one is, if you are not fond of reading, but if you want to try it out, there could be multiple, tutorials available. Where I have listed one, W3 Schools is a common platform where they teach various different technologies. So I have shared you the link there if you want to just try Python. Okay. Right, now I think we set this and we have discussed what we have. In assessment, usually we have about, we have quizzes in the class. I will use another online platform called Kahoot to have quiz to see how much you have understood in a session. And these quizzes will carry some marks for your end evaluations. So therefore, I want you to actively engage in the lecture as well as try to understand what we discuss. And if you have any issues. If something is not clear, basically you can talk to me directly, or you can use a chat feature here. Right. I think we are ready to go. Let's start with the basics in Python. First of all, if you ask me why Python, I think we should need to understand why Python is getting popular as well. One reason is it's the number one programming language, at least according to some of the leading rankings. So if you look at programming languages, there are various ways to rank them. So let me share like one of the rankings. So this particular website, TOP, is usually ranked programming languages. And if you look at the ranking for this month, October 2024, and you will notice that Python is on the top, and it's getting popular. You can see the change is still in positive side, which indicates that Python is still in the number one place. If you check the same thing in the previous year, October 2023, you will see Python is the number one programming language. I'm not underestimating the other programming languages. I mean, these programming languages are sometimes better suited for various different applications. But as students and as the beginners and those who are working with the data, and then also, STAT, R is again another programming language, but still Python is the programming language you need to understand. So I think that will give you some understanding why you might, you should learn, Python. And you can notice that if you look at the history, the Python was number one after around like 2022 and so on. So Python was there from the beginning in even year 2000s, and the C was earlier one of preferred languages, and Java also number one. But then you will notice the Python is becoming the programming language. So I think the time you spent here will not be a waste. I think it's an added qualification for you. So having said that, why you should learn Python? There are a couple of features I would like to highlight. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but it's very simple. So I have seen that some of you have already learned MATLAB, R, Java, C++, and so on. Believe me, Python will be very simple compared to those programming languages. And it is easy to learn. Let's see, after ending the course, we can review what we have listed here, whether you are in an agreement or not. And the third point is, once you develop something, it could be an application, it could be a simple code, you can use it everywhere, which means Python could be run in your mobile phone. There are some interpreters where you can write some codes even in your mobile, and it could be running even in the supercomputers places like Google and NASA. So therefore, I mean, it's again, you can see that once you develop something, you don't have to really worry about transferring it to various different hardware. Fourth point is free and open source. I have seen a lot of you are familiar with MATLAB programming languages, but then you have to spend quite a lot of money to purchase licenses, whereas Python is free. And if you look at particularly NumPy in Python, is you can do whatever you did with the MATLAB will be quite the same in NumPy as well. So most of the MATLAB programmers now switch into NumPy because most of the uh, functionalities that you have seen in MATLAB is available in Python as well. It's a high-level language, so you don't have to really about the hardware stuff, memory management, so you can focus on your coding. It's portable, it's interpreted, it's object-oriented, it's extensible, which means that if you do not see some of the features that you need, you can extend this. It's embeddable, which means you can put this into hardware. For example, in IoT, for example, you can write the code in Python and then you can put it as a hardware, right? Which is again another advantage. Last point, but I think it's a very important point, that we have extensive libraries. Since I talk a lot about the NumPy, let me show you like NumPy library also. You can go to numpy.org just to see. Mainly, this is the package we normally see scientific computing with Python. And if you go down, they have listed various different modules available for applications. So if you look at just the applications of NumPy in particular, you can notice that there are modules available in quantum computing, statistical computing, signal processing, image processing, graphs, networks, astronomy, cognitive psychology, bioinformatics, Bayesian inference, mathematical analysis, which is, I think, one of the things that you need, chemistry, geoscience, geography processing, architectural and engineering. Even in engineering, you can notice that there are plenty of applications are there. And if you are into array libraries, data science, machine learning, and visualization, again, there are plenty of machine learning, Python modules are there for you to start with. So therefore, what I have stressed in the beginning is, again, I think it's whole very important that you are familiar with this programming language. Right. Okay. So that's about why we should learn Python and the features of Python. The next is how to use Python. There are two, modes that you can interact in Python when you install. So therefore, I would like to go back again and see how to install Python in your machine. So if you want to install Python, you can go to python.org. This is the official Python web page. Before you can go to download, but before you go to download, you can even work within this. Why I am saying that sometimes, let me refresh again. You can see there's a yellow button here. You can see yellow button, which is what we call the launch interactive shell, which means that you can directly work inside this. So I click that yellow button and you will notice that it will give you a Python environment within Python official website. So you can notice that the Python version is 3.10.5, and then you see 3 angle brackets, which indicates that, okay, now it's ready to accept command. For example, I can print something, let's say print hello world, which is normally what we use to print. So you can notice that it's just a print function we have used here to just print something. So likewise, you can use it as a command line. Like in MATLAB also, you have the same situation. You can write it in, as a command, as a shell, right? And this is the same in Python as well. Okay, so that's if you want to have some interface to work with without installing. If you are interested in installing this, which I want everybody to do, you need to go to downloads. And then usually when you click downloads, and it will provide you, what version is appropriate for your machine. So in my case, I have a Windows machine, so it shows you a download for Windows and provide a link for downloading Python 3.13. So let me click on that. And when you click, it will download the file. So we can notice that Python is, downloaded here. Right. Once you get Python download, I can see in the file, you will notice that if you go to download, you have a Python 3.113.0. So let me double click on it. And then you will get this interface. Right. So once you download this, you can click install now, which will install the Python in the default place. And basically, it will install Python standard library, the idle environment for coding, and some documentation as well, right? So this might take like a couple of minutes based on configuration of your machine. Okay, so in my case, it was successful. So I'm going to close this. Now, once I have done this, and if you go to my start OLAPS, if you go down to my Python, you should notice that Python is installed. In my case, actually, I have saved a couple of Python versions. So you can notice that I have multiple Python versions, but this is what I have just installed, 3.13. I'm going to click on this. And let's start with this one first. You will notice that something called idle Python. So this is idle, which is IDE we use to, we are going to use for Python programming. Okay, so click on this. Right. Click this one, idle, and you will get this interface, which we call idle shell. Right. So those who have already installed, you go to idle, and then if you type print hello world, you will immediately get the outcome here as well. So this is called interactive shell, because you type something, immediately you get a result. And this is called prompt. And you have a blinking cursor here, which waiting for our commands. If you are not in a position to install, don't worry, you can always go to python.org. I'll refresh again. And usually when you refresh, you will see a yellow button. Which indicates that interactive shell. Click on this, which you will get an interactive session, right? So something like this, which you can work for today. Right. So that's the first thing that I want to discuss. So I told you, like in Python, there are two modes. What we have just witnessed is the interactive mode. So that means you type and you immediately get the result and in idle. But of course, when you want to write bigger programs or large, code base, then we have to go for what we call script mode. That means you write the code as a file, separate file. Okay. So idea is you type the command that you need to store, and then you save it as a file, and then you execute. So this is called script mode. And let me explain how to do this, right? Let me explain how to do this. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I will go back again to the shell. Those who do not have those who do not install Python, you have to just follow this, and then later you can try it out. So now this is called the shell. You go to file and you choose new file. The idea is we'll get a new file and we type the commands there. So I will put this in side by side. So this is what I have just, opened up, and we have the shell here, right? Okay. So now you can see this is the place where we are going to type commands. So I will type the same command, print hello world, right? And then you need to store this. So let me save the file. I will check file, save anywhere you want, but in my case, I prefer inside my course folder. I go to PJS, mastering IM, and this is computer application. And I will create a folder. We will call codes. I will say 2024. And then I will save this program as program number 1. So the idea is you save whatever the commands that we have typed as a Python file. And you can notice that I'm saving as a Python file. So I just save this. So if I go to same place, let me show you where we have. So I go inside my folder. So I'm inside the MSc Computer Application Codes 2024. You can notice that this is the file. If I right click and if I check for properties, you can notice that I have saved as a Python file. The extension is .py. It's Python. Okay, so that's how we work with the script. So let me start from the beginning. You choose file, new file. Then you will get a new window to type your command. So I typed print hello world and I save it. Right. Now we have saved it. Now we need to run this. So when you run, what happens? Whatever the command you listed here will be printed here. So let me run here, run module. And you can notice that it says restart, and this is the program. It will execute, and this is the outcome. So let me add another command, print. Let me say INM403 computer applications. Okay, now I have two print lines. Let me run this, run module. It will ask me to save. So this time when I rerun, I have two lines. I have two print statements. So when you write a complex code, sometimes you have to go step by step, which is best in a script mode. You can open up a new window, type whatever the command, and you can keep on running, see the outcome, and then you can modify. So this is ideal when you want to develop a complex application. Okay, I will go back to again this. So what we have just discussed is two ideas. There are two modes available. We call interactive mode as well as script mode. Any question on these two? Are we clear up to this point? Okay. So let me move to the next. So to print something, I told you what we can do. In a script mode, we go to idle, we open a choose file new window, we save it, and then we'll run it. The short cut is you can just press F5. Right. Next. So most of the time when you're new to something, you should learn how to getting help. Getting help in Python is easy. So I will go to shell window and I will show you. If you want to get, let's say, we just learned print function, but let's say we want to know more details about the print function. So our second function that we are going to discuss is called help function. And within this, you can type whatever the command that you want to know more about. So I will type print. What this command means, okay, we want to know more about print, and Python gives you what print function does. So if you go through the documentation, this is what we are getting. Print, you can have a number of arguments. Simply, you can have multiple values here. Then there are some arguments that you need to provide, which I will discuss later on. For example, here we will indicate that you can have multiple values. So for example, you can print something like this. So I can say INM403, comma, computer applications. So you can notice that I have multiple values because this is based on this idea. And if you look at this argument is just what you need to have to separate values. In our case, it says separation is a string inserted between lines. Default is a space. So if you want to change it, you can change. So I'm going to get the same command again. Let me put sep. I will say colon. So when I put colon, what happens? Instead of a space, in between. So here we have a space. So with this command, we are changing it to colon. So let me show you. If I press enter, now you will notice that, okay, we have changed how we separate two values by changing set and providing a different value to separate the two. Okay, so likewise, any functions that we are going to learn, if you need more information, remember to use help function. Help will give you more information. Initially, it might look a bit difficult, but when you get familiar, you will understand more about this. Okay, so with that, we conclude how to get help. Any questions? Okay, so having said that, you have no questions. How many of you have finished up to this point? Can you let me know by raising your hands? Finish up to this point. Okay, thanks. If you're not installed Python, still you can do in the same place. I told you, like, you go to python.org and open up this, and you can say help print. Okay, so you will get this. Press Q to quit, right? So print. Same thing, right? Okay, good. So let's move to the next one then. Right. Now let's look at more about how we can store things in Python. The two ideas that I'm going to discuss is constant and variables. So we need to store some values and they will not change during the program execution, which we call constant values. But if you want to have stored, but if it is changing, then we keep them as what we call variables. Since you are doing maths, you know about what variable is, and it goes with the similar semantic. So let's first focus about the constant values. In Python, we can have numbers, and there are various different formats, and we can have strings. First of all, let's look at some of the examples. You can enter the number, not like in any other programming language. You don't have to define what the data type is. What happens in Python, usually when you provide a value, Python will recognize based on how we provide the value. For example, if I put a number 5 like this, Python will understand this as an integer value, which means there's no decimal part here. If you look at the second one, you notice that there's a decimal part, which means 1.23. So when you have a decimal point, just the decimal point, you don't have to have anything else. If there's a decimal point, then Python will take this as a floating point number. We call float. Third one is interesting. We use 9.25e minus 3. What this means actually in Python, what this means is the scientific notation. So this is same as 9.25 into 10 to the power minus 3. You can just check this in Python. Let me open up Python for you. I will go to the idle shell. So here is what we have. Okay, if you just say 5, you will take as a 5 as it is. 1.23, it will take as it is. 1 point, even if you have a decimal point, it will take as a number with a decimal point. We call float. Last one, if you have something like this, 9.25 e to the minus 3, it just say 9.25 into 10 to the power minus 3, which is 0.00925. Okay, what about this one then? 1e2, without typing this command in the chat, can you tell me what is the outcome of this command? Yes. I want everybody to try this. So this means we already know 1 into 10 to the power 2. But please make a note of this, very important again. If you use this format, it will give you it as a floating point number. So it's just 100, but with a decimal point. Make a note of this, very important. Because it's very important to understand what will be the output, whether it's a integer format or the decimal or float point. So make a note of here that if you use this notation, it'll, whatever the number, it will give it as a number with a decimal point, which we call floating point number. Make a note of this. Okay, I hope you understood about the numbers. If you want to numbers as it is and how Python will treat for them. Now I'm going to switch to strings. Remember we talk about hello world, right? So I can type, for example, hello world like this. And this is what I have used when we are printing. This is called a string. But in Python, we can use either single quotes or the double quotes. So the second representation is you can use double quotes. Although you will see that Python will again get it as a single quote, but there's two possibilities that you can use. Now there's a question, why we need to have like two different forms, right? This is because sometimes this single quote or double quote could be part of the string. So for example, if you type like this, it's a string, you notice that there's a problem because this single quote indicates the start of a string and this is the end of a string. And if you try to enter like this, it will give us an error. Because what Python understands is when we have a single quote, it indicates that it will going to represent the string value. But here we have 3, right? Which is a problematic. So therefore, when you're using string values, and if the, for example, single quote is a part of the string, then we better use double quotes like this. I can say it's a string. Sorry, double quotes. You notice that how it used. Similar to that, if you want to use double quotes, like for example, let's say you want to use something like this, oh, right? Python will complain. So if you want to have double quotes in your message, right? Then use single quotes. Sorry, I made a mistake. Double quotes. Oh, double quote, single. Okay, this is the format you have to use. So make a note of this. Ideally, when you want to print, you have to use print statements. So the two print statements should be like this. We have to say print. If it is something like this, it's a string. You can notice it's a string. It's correctly printed down. And if you have double quotes in your text, it should be like this. Hope you understand the constants, the value we provide, and how we interact with Python. So we discussed two things, numbers and strings. Okay, more about this. So the three types are there. In numbers, you can have integers, floating point, and complex numbers. I'm just not going to explain these complex numbers, but if you need to use, you can use this form as well. But let me focus on common usage. So integers, you can put it in any of these formats. We call in Python, these are integer data, or in short, we say int. Floating point, which means number with a decimal point. For example, you see the first value 508 and you have a decimal point. Then Python will take it as a floating point number, or in short, we say float. And even the scientific notation. So if you use this, right? And remember, Python will take it as a floating point number. Okay. So now we have a question. So how do you know that? How Python will take it? Okay, there's a function which we can use for this purpose. We call type function. So if you use type function, Python will tell you like what exactly the format is. So whatever we have values used earlier, 5, 1.23, and so on, we can use this. So we can say type 5, and Python will tell us it's class int, which means it's integer data type. Type 1.23, it says float. Type 1 point, even it says float. So I hope now you understand how Python, understand different data types, right? For example, what is the outcome of this? If I put 1 like this, any guesses? Yes. Remember, we are using a single quote. What do you mean by single quote? I told you it's a string, right? So even though we have a number, since we are using quotes around it, Python will consider it as a string value. So make a note of this, very important. Depending on how you present number to the interpreter, it will understand its data type. So I hope you got my point, right? So therefore, it's important how you type to, how do you enter your data when you work in Python. So let's try some of these exercises. So if you say type 508 point, 508, it says int, but type 508 point, then it take float, right? Type 508.0, again float. Type 4 plus 2j, this is what we call the complex data form. Sorry. So I made a mistake here. Type hello world. Okay, we have a string. Irrespective of whether it's a single quotes or double quotes. So you can try with double quotes as well. Yes, hope you got that. If you check the last one, you will get an error. Let me explain that. If so when we write down very large numbers, we normally use comma to group them. But if you use this with Python, you are getting an error because Python has a special meaning for the commas. So therefore, make sure that when you're typing very large numbers, not to group them. You have to directly use them if you are intended to use with Python. So make a note that as well. So no grouping with commas in Python because Python has a special meaning which we'll discuss later on, right? So therefore, if you use commas, then it will generate a error message. Any questions? Are we clear up to this point? Okay, good. So we can move on. So now we discuss three functions like print functions, help function, and a type function. So ideally, what we are going to do is we will learn different Python keywords, the functions, and then once you learn how to put them together to solve a problem. So that's basically what programming is. Right. So let's focus more on string values. Already I discussed about the strings. Simply, a string can be seen as a sequence of characters, and I will come to that later on. So simply you can think of it as a sequence of characters. And the idea is Python supports Unicode. We call UTF-8 standard, which means if you know how to type in Sinhala or Tamil, you can do that as well. So let me try this. Hope it works. Let me open up. Okay. So I will try to type print. First, I will type in whatever the code in English. And let's try to type in Sinhala. So I'm going to switch the language to Sinhala. And then okay. I know it's not rendered very properly, but you see what my point is. So simply you can try this out. It supports any Unicode characters. But what I want to discuss is there are two representations which we have already discussed. You can use either single quotes or double quotes to represent string values. But one thing I didn't discuss that if you use single or double quotes, it indent for single lines. Single lines. For example, if you want to type something like, let's say, PGIS, and if you try to make enter, you will get an error because you can't have multi-line strings with single or double quotes. So therefore, if you need multi-line strings, we have to use triple single quotes or triple double quotes like this. So I can say, first I will use triple single quotes. Yes. PJS, and then I will say, okay, University of Peradeniya. So you see how it rendered now properly. It's multi-line string. So if you want to use multi-line strings, remember that you have to use either triple single quotes. Yes, I hope you got my point. Right. So that's about multi-line strings. So now we have discussed strings. You can use single quotes, you can use double quotes. Use single or double for single line strings. If you need multi-line strings, then use triple single quotes or triple double quotes. Okay, so let's move on. Any questions up to now? No questions? Okay, so I'm assuming that you are very familiar with what we have discussed, right? Right. Okay, good. Shall we move on then? Let's move on next one. Okay, small exercise for you. And I want everybody to send me the answers in the chat. Right. Let's focus on variables now. Now, the previous one, I told you it's constants, the numbers, strings as it is. It won't change inside the program or during the program execution. But sometimes we need to store some data and we want to manipulate, we want to change. Now, whenever we want to use in that way, we have to create variables. Now, the first thing that we need to learn is how to create variable names. That means we call identifiers. So when we want to store something, let's say number 10, we want to store in a variable. So you are familiar with like x equal 10, y equal 5 in maths, right? Similar to that. We can also use the same way, but we have to follow some rules. So in Python, when you are creating variable names, these are the rules that you need to follow. Okay, what are the rules? First character should be a letter or it could be underscore. So make sure that when you type a variable name, it should be a letter or it could be underscore. After that, after the first character, second character onwards, you can have letters, you can have underscores, you can have digits, the numbers. So that's very important. And another thing that you need to remember is if you type something in simple and capital, they are not the same in Python. For example, if I use simple X and if I use capital X, Python treat them as two different variables. So make a note of this. So therefore, if you follow these rules, I have given you some variable names. Like if you take a single letter like IXA, they are valid variable names. Look at the second one. We have two underscores, underscore, underscore, my underscore name, again valid because you start with underscore and the remaining are letters and underscores. Look at the third one. Start with the letter and the remainings are the letters, underscores, and the numbers. Again, a valid variable name or valid identifier name. Last one, A1, B2, underscore C3. Again, you start with the letters and the remainings are the letters, numbers, and the underscores. Again, valid. Okay, invalid variables or invalid identifiers. You can have spaces. Here you can see two things and there's a space in between. For example, you cannot type first name with a space in between. So you cannot, and Python will not allow it. So make a note, very important. Again, multiple spaces, it's not valid. What about the third one? Can you guess what the problem in this one? Yes. Why the third one is incorrect? It started with the letter. Yes. If you look at the third one, it's a dash. Dash is not valid with variable naming. So only allowed is letters, underscore, and numbers after the second character. First character should be a letter or underscore. So therefore, the third one is incorrect. And the next one is you have quotes not allowed, right? You cannot use quotes as a variable name. So I hope you got an understanding. Yes, what rules needs to follow when you're naming a variable. Okay, we'll have a small exercise there. So this is called assignment. So these are variables and these are some of the values. What are the problems in these variables? Can you let me know? First one. Is there any problem with this one? If your answer is yes, can you let me know in the chat what is the problem here? Is it valid or invalid? Yes, and as Nuan said, it's invalid. Why it is invalid, Nuan? Because you start with a number and you cannot start with a number. The starting character should be a letter or underscore. Good point. Second one. What is the problem with the second one? We have more dollar. First character start with the letter, no problem. But the dollar is the problem. Dollar is a not valid symbol. You cannot use dollar as a variable. Only allowed symbol is underscore, underscore only. Last one. Is there a problem with the class then? Is it valid or invalid? According to what we have discussed so far. According to the rules that we have discussed so far. Is it valid or invalid? Yes. What we have just discussed, it looks valid. But let me explain. This is also incorrect. If you type all the three statements, you will get errors. Let me type it and show you. So if you take you have a variable and then you assign some string value. It says invalid. And it shows you, indicates that the problem with the number. It's a problem with the symbol, right? Okay. So in this case, this will not show as an error, but you see the color is in orange. The class, the word class is very special to Python. So let me explain that. So according to Python version 3.10, current version is 3.13. This might be different. We have to check the documentation. Python has what we call 35 keywords. These keywords are very special words that we have used in Python. So all these are used to create programs. All these are words we use to create programs in Python. So therefore, none of these can be used as variable names or identifiers. So make a note of this. So you can see here, we have a class. So therefore, you cannot use class as a variable. You cannot use if as a variable. You cannot use and as a variable. But remember that these are all simple except the first three. So if you use, for example, C capital, that you can use in Python. But remember, you cannot use it as it is. So therefore, true, false, and none with the first letter capital, you cannot use. But of course, you can change this and then you may use it, right? So make a note of this. There are 35 keywords according to the Python version 3.10. These 35 keywords you cannot use as variable names. Any questions? Okay, now that we have discussed about the variables, let me talk about simple assignment. Now, assignment means we are trying to store values inside these variables. So, for example, when we say a equals 10 in Python, what really happens? So, inside the memory, it will create a space to store 10. So, if I draw this as a memory, right? So when we say the statement a equals 10, what happens? So in the memory, it allocates a space to hold the number. And this memory space or memory reference, we name it as A. And then we store 10. And that is what happens here. So it's different from what you see in mathematics, like not the two sides are equal. We assign. So actually, it should have been something like arrow in other side that indicates that we store that in A. So the next one, what happens? When we say B equals A, B equals A, so which means you are referring to B as A. So what happens? It will not create a new place. It will refer the same memory location as A. So A will be directed to some place in the memory. So B, we say same as A, which means it's also directed to the same place. So of course, B is also 10 there. Okay, quick question. So what is C there? A is 10, B is 10. What is C there? So C, for example, we say A plus B. So this is a new value. So we need a new location in the memory. And A is 10, B is 10, 10 plus 10, right? C is 20. So that's how it goes. So you can notice that left-hand side always your variable and right-hand side could be expression. When we say expression, it could be a constant like 10. Or it could be another variable like A. Or it could be another expression. And this is addition, right? So this could be a constant, could be another variable, or it could be some arithmetic expression. So this is what we discuss in the assignment. So simply with that, now you understand how we can store values in variables. Right. So once you store values, then you can manipulate them, right? For example, let's take this example. So we have what? We have a variable called greeting. We say hello world. So what we did, we store hello world string as a variable greeting. So you can print it. You can say print greeting. And what happens? The value inside the greeting was hello world, it will print out. And if you use type greeting, simply we are checking what is the type of the value stored inside the greeting. It says it's a string. Okay, similar to that. Let's say n equals 17, which we create a space in the memory, store 17, and the memory reference we put as n. So we can say print n. And it prints 17. Type in, it's a integer value, so it says int. Last one, we have pi value, so we can print pi. What is type pi? We know it's floating point now. So with that said, I think that you understand how this will work on. Any questions up to this? Any questions? No questions? Okay, so we can move on. Next one, what I'm going to discuss. Python statements. So in Python, we can have expressions, which we will have a combination of values like 1 plus 1, which will add 1 and 1 together. Or you can have variables like a plus b. We have two variables, we are adding variables. Or you can have function calls like len. So here like print, like type, like help, len is another function. What len does is, it will calculate how many characters inside. So here we have hello, and it will tell us how many characters inside. Okay, so let me try in idle. So we can have 1 plus 1, that is 2. A plus B. Okay, we have to set some values. Let's say A is 10, B is, let's say 20. So if I say A plus B, now Python interpreter understand what means this. So it says 30. Len, hello. Okay, so length of this, it just say 5. So remember that whenever you don't understand something, you can just type it. For example, you can say help len. Simply it will say return the number of items in a container. So in this particular case, the container is a string. string has characters. It's a sequence of characters. So it will tell us how many characters inside this. And we are getting 5. So I hope you understand what we have, right? Okay, let's move on. Last one for today's session. So the idea for this is we need to understand what we have here. We are going to use operators and operands. So operators mean some tokens like addition, multiplication, and division. These are we call operators. Operands are values we use. For example, when we say 2 plus 3, this is operator. And these are operands. Okay. So we are going to start some operators first. So to begin with, I'm going to start with arithmetic operations. So you might be already familiar with this. Plus is the symbol we use for addition, minus, subtraction. We use asterisk for multiplication. For example, let me show you with the side view. Right. So the plus is addition. So let me use 2 operands, 10 and 3. So 10 plus 3 is 13. Then 10 minus 3 is a subtraction, 7. 10 into 3 is 30, multiplication. Then we have division. Make a note of that. Division is always floating point number. I will repeat. Division is always a floating point number. So in this particular case, 10 divided by 3, we'll get 3.33 something. Then exponentiation, that means 10 and 2 asterisk 3. So what this means is 10 to the power 3. So that means 10 into 10 into 10. So which is 1000. Next, 10 integer divided by 3. So this is called integer division. So you divide 10 by 3 and then you will take integer part of it. So what is the integer part of it? So 10 divided by 3, it's 3 point something. So integer part is only 3. Last one, 10, we call modulo operator. 10 mod 3, which means we get the remainder. So what this means, 10, you divide by 3 and then the remainder. Okay, good. So now you understand, right, how the arithmetic operator we use in mathematics, right? So what about this then? What is the value of this? So if I say 2 plus 3 into 4, 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 into 4, is it 20? So what is the outcome of this arithmetic operations? 2 plus 3 into 4. We know that there's an order in any expression. It's in same as mathematics. Same goes with the arithmetic operators. So first the multiplication, then the addition, right? Which you will get 14. So when you are providing, you have to think about the order of operations. So when you work with, it's very similar to mathematics. So you go with parentheses, the highest precedence. then exponentiation, which means the power, then multiplication, division, they are the same. It doesn't matter which comes first. So for example, 2 into 3 into 4. Okay. So it doesn't matter which order we are going to use. Okay. It doesn't matter which order we are going to use. Doesn't matter which order we are using. But remember, when you have a situation like this, when you want to decide whether you are going to go with multiplication, division, usually we go from left-hand side. So that means first we multiply, then we divide. Make a note of this. When you have same precedence, we will evaluate from left to right. So 2 to the power, so 2 into 3, that is 6, divided by 6, that is 1. Again, division is floating point, we get 1.0. Final one, although we have same precedence, except for one. So if you have something like this, so this is exponential power. So make a note of this. If you have this situation is slightly different, it's not from left to right, it should be right to left. So this is same as 2 to the power 3, right to 3. So make a note of this, very important. So for example, if I put 2 here, it will be easier for us. So first you work with this, 3 to the power 2 is 9. Then 2 to the power 9, that is 512. So make a note of this. So when you have same precedence, usually we go from left to right, except for exponentiation, which goes from right to left. Okay, with that said, I'm going to finish for today, right? What we discussed is the basics that we need to understand about Python structured programming environment. But before we finish, we are going to have a small quiz. So please get ready with that. So always the quizzes that we use what we call the Kahoot platform. Please visit kahoot.it. Yes, please visit to kahoot.it. Yes, are we ready? Right. So let's start there. So please visit to kahoot.it. And I want you to type your registration number as the username. It asks when you go to kahoot.it, it asks a game pin. Type 266714. Right? and then it has a nickname. Type your registration number. Okay, we have 12 today. Visit to www.kahoot.it and first is ask game pin. Type 266714.